She replaced her sister at the airport pickup and picked up the Mafia boss by mistake. The rain over Jersey City was biblical, a thick gray sheet that turned the 5:30 p.m. shift change into a miserable blur. Nora Hayes, 28 years old and smelling faintly of sourdough and deli mustard, slammed the back door of the sandwich shop. The lock clicked just as her phone buzzed with the familiar, frantic ringtone she had assigned to her sister. "Nora, thank God. I need a massive favor." Nora huddled under the leaking awning, pulling her thin, cheap coat tighter. "Lila, I just finished a 10-hour shift. I'm soaked." I know, but this is critical. My client, he lands at Atlantic Gateway in 45 minutes, and my car just died. Completely dead, I swear." A lie. Lila's car was fine. She was probably at a cocktail hour in Soho. "You have to get him, please, Nora, he's important." Nora squeezed her eyes shut. The fixer. That was her role. Lila Hayes chased the glamorous PR life in Manhattan, leaving Nora to patch the holes in the family boat, the boat their father had left behind when he died too young. Nora had been the one to drop out of nursing school, the one to manage their mother's illness, the one to keep paying the bills on their crumbling Jersey City apartment while Lila networked. "Fine," Nora muttered. "Atlantic Gateway. Who am I looking for?" "Mr. Navarro. He's easy to spot." Lila rushed, relief evident in her voice. "Latin American, dark suit, traveling solo, carrying a brown leather suitcase. He knows I'm sending a car. Just hold a sign. You're a lifesaver. Nora, I owe you." The line clicked dead. Lila never sent a photo. 40 minutes later. Nora sat idling in the VIP arrivals lane at Atlantic Gateway, the windshield wipers on her 20-year-old sedan fighting a losing battle against the deluge. She caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, hair frizzy from the humidity, wearing the same faded coat she had worn for 3 winters. She looked like exactly what she was tired, broke, and a long way from the important world Lila pretended to inhabit. This was not the welcome wagon for a high-priority client. Her father, a former federal port investigator, would have hated this. He hated sloppy work, and this last-minute scramble felt dangerously sloppy. The automatic doors of the terminal hissed open, spilling a wave of travelers into the damp night. Nora squinted, scanning for Lila's description. She held up the damp piece of cardboard she had grabbed from the shop's recycling. "Guest for Lila" scrawled on it in black marker. She saw a man in a dark suit, but he was arguing with his family. She saw a brown leather suitcase, but it was carried by a pilot. Then the doors opened again. This man was different. He was tall, moving with a predator's economy of motion. A black trench coat was draped over his shoulders, covering a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. He was not Latin American. His features were sharp, distinctly Italian, with a jawline that looked cut from marble. He was not scanning for a ride. He was scanning for threats. His eyes swept the curb, dismissing the other drivers with their printed signs, assessing exits and sightlines. He did not fit Lila's description at all, yet he radiated an aura of absolute, undeniable importance. His gaze passed over her, then snapped back, locking onto the sloppy sign in her hand. He ignored everyone else and moved straight toward her. Nora's breath hitched. He did not wait for her to get out. He did not approach the passenger window. He walked directly to the rear door of her rattling sedan and pulled the handle, opening it as if he owned the vehicle and the air around it. A cloud of cold rain and expensive cologne, something dark, like leather and spice, invaded the car's interior, overwhelming the lingering smell of vinegar chips. Nora twisted in her seat, her voice coming out as a reedy squeak. "Mr. Navarro." The man did not answer. He did not confirm or deny. He simply observed her for one long, unblinking moment, taking in the cheap coat and the old car with an unnerving stillness. His eyes were the color of dark roast coffee, and they held no warmth. "Go," he said. The voice was a low baritone, laced with the distinct, clipped accent of the Italian-American East Coast. "Do not stop at the main gate. Drive. An order, not a request. Nora, trained by years of fixing Lila's messes, just did it." Her foot hit the gas. The sedan complained as it pulled away from the curb, merging into the chaotic airport traffic. She glanced in the rearview mirror, her heart thumping against her ribs. That was when she saw it. A black, heavily tinted SUV, the kind that cost 6 figures, pulled out from the curb directly behind them. It was not just following, it was flanking, maintaining a precise, protective distance. Lila definitely had not mentioned a security detail. They navigated the complex airport loops and merged onto the wet expanse of Highway 9A, the rain hammering the roof like drum fire. The silence in the car was deafening, thick with the stranger's presence. Nora gripped the wheel, her knuckles white. She had to say something. She had to confirm the destination. Lila mentioned the Harborview Marriott. Is that... The man in the back seat finally moved. She watched him in the mirror. He was not looking at the road. He was looking at her reflection. "Your sister couldn't make it," he said, his voice flat and cold. "So they sent you." He paused, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his dark eyes. Interesting. The tone was not that of a PR client. It was the tone of a man who had just discovered an unexpected, and perhaps useful, flaw in a plan. Nora's stomach went cold. The interior of the old sedan felt like it was shrinking. The rain lashed against the windows, isolating them in a small, damp bubble of tension. Nora gripped the steering wheel, her palms sweating despite the cold draft coming from the faulty window seal. She had to regain control, to pretend this was just another of Lila's chaotic favors. "Lila mentioned the Harborview Marriott? Is that correct?" Nora tried to keep her voice professional, the one she used on catering managers and angry landlords. A low, humorless sound came from the back seat. It was almost a laugh, but devoid of any warmth. "No. We're going to the Cobalt Tower." Nora's mind raced. The Cobalt Tower. She knew it. Everyone in the city did. It was a sphere of black glass and steel in the financial district, a building so exclusive it did not bother with a hotel affiliation. It was a place for billionaires and shadows. I do not think that is in Lila's notes. It is in mine," he said. Nora swallowed, tasting the acid of her earlier coffee. She had just let a complete stranger reroute her, a stranger with a dedicated, armed escort vehicle shadowing their every move. The black SUV was still there in her mirror, a patient, lethal guard dog. This was not a PR client. This was someone accustomed to living with and needing armed protection. The man leaned forward slightly. The movement was minimal, but it shifted the car's entire center of gravity. "The questions now go in one direction," he stated. "How long ago did your sister call you?" "What?" "The notice. How much did she give you?" His voice was patient, like a surgeon about to make an incision. About 40 minutes before you landed, maybe 45. "Did she send you a photograph of me?" "No. Just a description, Latin American, brown suitcase." "You do not match the description." "Did you ask for my ID when I got in the car?" "No," Nora admitted, feeling stupid. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Mr. Navarro," she said, but it sounded weak, a question rather than a statement. He ignored the name. He pulled out a sleek, impossibly thin phone and tapped the screen. The light from it illuminated the hard angles of his face, his eyes focused and intense. A notification appeared, a short, encrypted line of text. Nora watched in the mirror as his eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. The air in the car grew colder. He looked up, his gaze finding hers in the mirror again, pinning her. "The man you were supposed to pick up, a doctor, Emilio Navarro, collected his own bags and took a taxi 30 minutes ago." His voice was soft, but it cut through the sound of the rain. "You were never meant for him, Nora Hayes. You were pushed toward me." Her blood turned to ice. He knew her name. Of course he did. It was on the sign, but the way he said it sounded like an accusation. He put the phone away. "My name is Valerio Santoro." The name itself meant nothing to her, just a musical, Italian name. But the way he said it, the simple, declarative weight of it, suggested it should mean everything. It was a name spoken by a man who never had to repeat himself. "Tonight," Valerio continued, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial low, "I was expecting a vehicle. A vehicle from my own people, sent to the VIP gate for a secure, pre-planned route. Your appearance, with your little sign, creates two possibilities. One, you are bait, knowingly sent to disrupt my arrival." He paused, his eyes flicking to her worn coat, her chapped hands on the wheel. "Or two, you are an innocent, used by someone else to do the same thing." Nora's panic, a cold and sharp thing, finally broke through her exhaustion. "I do not know what you are talking about. Pull over." "I am pulling over right now." She started to signal, aiming for the next exit ramp. "No, I'm not bait. I'm just doing my sister a favor. I need to call her." Nora fumbled in her pocket for her own phone, her fingers shaking, before she could even unlock the screen. A hand moved from the back seat, quicker than she could have imagined. It was not violent, but it was absolute. His long fingers closed over her phone, plucking it from her grasp. "Hey," he powered it off, the screen going black. Then he calmly slid the device into the inner pocket of his suit coat. "Calling her now," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Only confirms to them that the plan is working. It leads them directly to you and to me. I will not allow that." Just then, the SUV behind them flashed its high beams. Not a random flicker, but two sharp, deliberate blips of light. A signal. Valerio's entire demeanor shifted. The analytical patience vanished, replaced by a chilling, quiet command. "Take the next left. We're going through Midtown. Change the route, now. But that is out of the way. The traffic. That is the point," he snapped. "Drive." Nora's hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold the wheel steady. She took the turn, her old car swerving into the new lane, earning her an angry honk from a taxi. Valerio Santoro watched her. He did not look at the traffic. He did not look at the SUV. He watched her. He noted the way her thumb, calloused from a utility knife she used to open boxes at the shop, was rubbing nervously against the steering wheel. He saw the deep, bone-weary exhaustion in her eyes, a tiredness that had nothing to do with this one night. "You are not a criminal," he observed, his voice reverting to its cold, analytical tone. "You are just a good sister." The assessment, so cold and so perfectly, painfully accurate, almost made her cry. They drove in silence for another 5 minutes, Nora navigating the concrete canyons of Midtown as the SUV held its position behind them. Finally, Valerio leaned forward. He did not move into the front seat, but he leaned through the gap between the headrests, bringing his presence the cold, the cologne, the power directly beside her. His warm breath ghosted against the shell of her ear, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine that was not entirely from fear. "From now until I know who put you in my car," he whispered, the words precise and final. "You stay with me. This is not a kidnapping, it is how you stay alive." The private elevator from the underground garage did not stop at a lobby. It ascended in a pressurized, silent rush, the digital display climbing to the number 47. When the doors opened, they did not open onto a hallway, but directly into the penthouse itself. Nora stumbled out, her senses overwhelmed. The room was a cavern of glass, black marble and rich, dark walnut. 3 walls were windows, floor to ceiling, revealing the storm-lashed city below as a glittering, angry jewel. The rain did not just fall, it attacked the glass, but the sound was completely muted, as if they were in a vacuum. In her damp $20 coat and scuffed sneakers, Nora felt like a piece of garbage that had blown in. She instinctively crossed her arms, trying to make herself smaller. 2 men in dark suits stood near the entryway. They did not look at her. Their focus was entirely on the man behind her. They nodded once. "Mr. Santoro." No one asked who she was. No one questioned her presence. Valerio Santoro walked past her, shrugging the trench coat from his shoulders. He handed it to one of the men without looking at him. He glanced back at Nora, who was still dripping onto the marble floor. "Your coat," he said. It was not a request. Nora awkwardly shed the garment. He took it from her, his fingers brushing hers, his skin warm, hers ice cold. He handed her coat to the guard as if it were a priceless sable, though his expression betrayed no opinion at all. He procured a thick, folded towel from a nearby closet and tossed it to her. "In this house," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Anyone who sees you with me assumes you are a guest. They will not ask questions." He motioned her toward a seating area that was larger than her entire apartment. A moment later, a quiet woman in a gray uniform appeared with a tray. On it was a bowl of steaming soup, a piece of bread, and a glass of water. Another, smaller box was placed on the table. "Eat," he ordered. Nora looked at the box. "What is that?" "Something dry." She opened it. Inside was a simple set of black sweatpants, a soft gray t-shirt, and thick socks. They were not branded. They were just clean and new. And as she held them up, she realized with a cold jolt they were exactly her size. "How did you know my size? I have a capable staff." Valerio had already turned away, dismissing her. The implication was terrifying. In the hour they had been driving, his staff had not only identified her, but had run her measurements, her history, and delivered clothing. She was not a person. She was a piece of data he was managing. He moved to a screen that was seamlessly integrated into a black stone wall. He tapped it, and a secure, text-only interface appeared. It looked like an internal bulletin board. Nora was too far away to read most of it, but she saw the header on the most recent alert, timestamped just 30 minutes ago. "Gateway pickup compromised. Suspected interference, Eastbridge Collective." The name sounded like a shipping company, but Valerio's posture, the way his shoulders set, told her it was not. He turned back to her, the distant, analytical look in his eyes replaced by a sharp, focused intensity. He walked back and sat in the armchair opposite her. He did not ask her to sit, but she sank onto the edge of the sofa anyway. "We are going to talk about your sister again," he said, his voice quiet. It was no longer an interrogation. It was a dissection. "And your father?" "My father is dead," Nora said, her voice tight. "I am aware. He was a federal investigator. Bureau of Atlantic Port Integrity, is that correct?" She nodded, her throat dry. He knew the exact obscure title of the agency. "Your sister, Lila," he continued, leaning forward. "She is in public relations, but she has recently been spending time she cannot afford in places she does not belong. Specifically, the offices of the Northlight Meridian Agency." Nora's brow furrowed. The name was vaguely familiar. I think she mentioned them," Nora said, her voice small. "She said they were a potential new client." "A logistics firm." Valerio's eyes darkened. "They are not a logistics firm." He said it with a finality that chilled her. He was investigating them, too. The name hung in the air between them, a new, volatile piece of the puzzle. Before Nora could ask another question, Valerio's personal phone, the slim one he had used in the car, buzzed on the glass table beside him. He picked it up, answering in rapid, low-register Italian. The language was fluid and harsh, all sharp consonants. Nora understood none of it, except for the one word he spoke with a sudden, cutting clarity. "Lila?" He listened for another 30 seconds, his face a mask of stone. He said one final, sharp word in Italian and ended the call. The silence that followed was heavier than the storm outside. "That was my team," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "They paid a visit to your apartment in Jersey City, looking for your sister." Nora shot to her feet, spilling a few drops of water. "Looking for her, or to hurt her?" "She was already gone," Valerio said, his eyes tracking her. "She left 15 minutes before my men arrived. Someone tipped her off." The blood drained from Nora's face. The implications hit her like a physical blow. Lila was not just irresponsible. Lila was involved. Oh God, she knew this was... this. Nora gestured wildly at the room, at him. She knew it was dangerous, and she sent me. The betrayal was a hot, acidic thing in her throat. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her lungs. She started to pace, her wet shoes squeaking on the marble. "I have to call the police. I have to find her. I need my phone." She lunged for the table, but Valerio was faster. He did not grab her. He simply rose, blocking her path, a mountain of quiet, tailored menace. When she tried to dodge him, He placed his hands on her shoulders. They were not gentle, but they were not violent. They were anchors, heavy and warm, holding her in place. "Stop!" he commanded. It was not a shout, but it vibrated through her. "Let me go. I have to. Nora, look at me." She was trapped, her eyes wild, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She forced her gaze up to his. "You are not the target," he said, his voice a low, steady rumble that seemed to counteract her panic. "Your sister's name was the key. They used it to divert my schedule, to see my response. You were just the tool they used to do it." His proximity was suffocating. He smelled of that dark cologne, of the cold night, and of a clean, masculine scent that was just him. His hands were strong on her shoulders, the controlled power in them undeniable. She could feel the strength that could snap her in two, but was instead just holding her steady. She hated that it was working. She hated that his control was a balm to her terror. He was looking at her, really looking at her, and his expression was no longer hard. It was assessing. He saw the genuine, unscripted fear in her eyes, the raw honesty of her panic. She was not playing an angle. Failure to find this in his own world made him pause. The air between them shifted, crackling with a new, dangerous electricity. The fear in Nora's chest was suddenly tangled with an unwelcome spark, a magnetic pull toward the very man who was the center of her terror. Valerio felt it too. He saw the shift in her eyes as her panic warred with this new awareness. He was a man of immense discipline. He deliberately broke the contact, his hands dropping from her shoulders. He took one measured step back, though his eyes never left hers. The moment was broken, but the echo of it remained. "You will sleep in the guest room tonight," he said, his voice back to its neutral, commanding tone. "The door will remain open." Nora flinched. He saw it and clarified. "I have cameras covering every exit of this house, including that hallway. The open door is not for me. It is so my security and the cameras can see that no one touches you." It was a promise of total protection and a statement of absolute imprisonment. He gestured to the soup, which was still steaming. "Eat. Get some sleep. We move in the morning." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing down a long, dark hallway, already pulling out his phone to make another call. Nora was left alone in the silent, opulent fortress, the lights of the city glittering like 1,000 unblinking eyes. Her head was spinning. Her sister was missing. A possible traitor, a criminal organization called the Eastbridge Collective was involved, and she, Nora Hayes, was the prisoner of a dangerous man who had just saved her life. She sank onto the sofa, the unwelcome truth settling in her stomach, heavy as stone. She was terrified of Valerio Santoro, and she was, in a way that made her sick, undeniably drawn to him. Sleep was not a state Nora entered. It was a shallow, anxious void she hovered in for a few hours on a sofa that cost more than her car. At 6 a.m, there was no gentle alarm. There was only Valerio Santoro's voice from the doorway, sharp and final. "Get up. We are leaving." He was already dressed in a fresh dark shirt and trousers, his hair still damp from a shower. He looked rested, which only made Nora feel more exhausted in her borrowed sweatpants. "The Eastbridge Collective," and he said, not waiting for her to fully wake, "knows who you are now. They know where you live. They will check your apartment for leverage, for information. We need to get there first." They did not take the gleaming, silent elevator. They took a freight elevator in the back, down to a subterranean level of the garage. The vehicle was not the SUV. It was a dark, nondescript sedan. The license plates had been changed. A single, silent bodyguard, the same one from the penthouse, sat in the driver's seat. His name, Nora had learned, was Marco. Valerio motioned for her to get in the back. The drive back to Jersey City, crossing the bridge against the early commuter traffic, was heavy with tension. The sky was a pale, washed-out gray. Nora felt like she was haunting her own life, a passenger in a ghost car, returning to a home that was no longer hers. The apartment building looked depressingly normal. Marco got out first, his eyes scanning the quiet street, his hand resting inside his jacket. Valerio nodded, and they moved. Valerio did not bother with the buzzer. He tested the handle to her apartment door. It was unlocked. He pushed it open with 2 fingers, a fraction at a time, positioning himself in front of Nora. The apartment was still, but it was wrong. The air was stale. A pile of Lila's junk mail that had been on the counter was gone. A half-empty mug of coffee Nora had left by the sink had been washed and put away. Valerio walked to the electronic keypad by the door. "The entry log," he said, his voice low. "It has been wiped. Someone was here after Lila left, and they erased their tracks." He moved through the small space with an unnerving, predatory grace. He did not care about the kitchen or the living room. He went straight to the small, cluttered desk in the corner, the one piled high with her father's old things. Nora had never had the heart to throw them out. "This is his," Valerio stated, tapping the beige, ancient desktop computer tower. "It is just junk," Nora said, her voice thin. "I keep it for, I do not know, sentimental reasons." Valerio ignored her. His attention was fixed on a sagging cardboard box next to the desk. He crouched, pulling out a thick, faded file. The official seal was still visible, dark blue ink on aging manila. "Bureau of Atlantic Port Integrity," Valerio read aloud, his voice flat. He went perfectly still. He looked from the file to Nora, and for the first time, his cold, controlled mask cracked, revealing a flash of genuine, sharp anger underneath. "My family. The Santoro Group," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Your father investigated us 10 years ago." Nora's blood ran cold. "He was an investigator. He worked at the port. He investigated everyone." "He investigated us," Valerio corrected, rising to his full height. "He was the only one who ever got close. This was not a coincidence." He looked at her, his eyes pinning her with a new, furious understanding. "You were not a random replacement. Someone on the inside knew who you were. They knew you were the daughter of the one man who almost dismantled our operations. They pushed you at me." He looked utterly disgusted, but not at her. "They thought you were a vulnerability. They thought your history would make me sloppy or sentimental." A sharp sound from the hallway, Marco's voice. A single, urgent word Sir Valerio did not think. He reacted. He grabbed Nora by the arm, yanking her out of the way, and shoved her down behind the cheap kitchen counter. "Stay down," he commanded. The apartment door burst open. The sounds that followed were not the loud bangs Nora expected from movies. They were quiet, heavy thwips, the sickening sound of silenced weapons. 3 men, dressed in black, faces covered by masks, moved into the room in a tight, professional formation. Marco met the first 2 by the door. A brutal, close-quarters fight, but the third man broke past, his eyes locking on the desk, on the files. He saw Nora huddled by the stove. He raised his weapon. Nora screamed. Valerio was already moving to intercept, but he was a second too late. Nora, in a blind panic, reacted without thought. Her hand shot out and grabbed the only thing within reach, the electric kettle she had left on that morning, its contents still steaming. She did not aim. She just threw it. The kettle, full of boiling water, struck the man square in the chest. He roared, a muffled, agonizing sound, dropping his weapon to claw at his face and neck as the scalding water soaked through his clothes. The distraction was all Valerio needed. He closed the distance in an instant, disarmed the man with a sickening crack of bone, and slammed his head against the refrigerator. The man slumped to the floor, unconscious. Silence fell, broken only by Marco's heavy breathing and the hissing of the kettle. 2 men were down by the door. The third was at Nora's feet. Valerio looked at the man, at the spreading pool of water, and then at Nora. She was shaking so violently she could barely stand. Her hand, which had gripped the metal, was bright red. He looked at her differently, not as a problem, not as a victim. "We are leaving," he said, his voice tight with an urgency she had not heard before. "Now." They did not go back to Manhattan. They drove for an hour, deep into Red Hook, to a street of abandoned warehouses. Marco pulled the car inside one, and a steel door rolled down, sealing them in. The interior was not a warehouse. It was a fortress, warm, with exposed brick walls, heavy wooden beams, and the faint, comforting smell of old wood and roasted coffee. The adrenaline that had held Nora together evaporated. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto a heavy leather couch. Her entire body seized by uncontrollable tremors. The delayed shock hit her like a physical blow. Valerio dismissed Marco with a nod. He returned a moment later, not with a weapon but with a first aid kit. He knelt in front of her. He did not speak. He just took her red, stinging hand and began to gently, expertly apply a cool burn cream. His touch was clinical, yet surprisingly gentle. He finished bandaging her palm. He did not let go. He held her hand, watching the tremors that still racked her body. Slowly, he reached up with his other hand and placed it on the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, his thumb finding the tense muscle at the base of her skull and rubbing softly. "You did well," he said, his voice a low vibration. "But do not ever be that reckless again." The patronizing tone snapped her out of her shock. She tried to pull her hand away. "Reckless," she seethed, her voice shaking. "That was my home. Those were my father's things. I have a right." "You have no rights in this." He cut her off, his eyes hardening, though his hand remained on her neck, holding her. "Not anymore. You are in my world now. Because of you," she shot back, finding her anger. "Because of who your family is, my father hunted people like you. And now his daughter is being saved by one," Valerio countered. He was very close now, the space between them electric, charged with violence and adrenaline. The rain had started again, hammering on the tin roof of the safe house. "I do not need saving," she whispered, a lie to both of them. "No," he said, his gaze dropping to her mouth. "Perhaps not." The argument died, replaced by the tension that had been building since the airport. It was too fast, too much. He leaned in, and Nora, in a moment of defiance and desperate need, met him halfway. It was not a gentle kiss. It was deep, desperate, and demanding, a raw clash of survival and fear. His hand moved from her neck, sliding down her back, pressing her closer. Nora's hands fisted in his shirt, holding on as if he were the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. His lips were firm and warm, a stark contrast to the coldness he showed the world. He whispered something against her skin, a low, soothing murmur in Italian she did not understand but felt to her core, a command to calm. They broke apart, both breathing hard, the air thick between them. The safe house door was still open a crack, a sliver of the cold outside world visible. But in here, there was only the sound of the rain and their ragged breathing. Valerio rested his forehead against hers for a fleeting second, his eyes closed. The distance, the roles of captor and captive, had just been irrevocably erased. He pulled back, his expression intense, unreadable. "They will not stop," he said, his voice hoarse. "As long as they think you are my weakness, they will hunt you." Nora looked at the man who was her entire problem, and her only solution. "Then I guess I'm not your weakness." A flicker of something new passed through his eyes. Respect, the bond, forged in terror and sealed in a moment of absolute chaos, was set. The quiet in the Red Hook safe house was a different kind of silence than the one in the penthouse. That one had been sterile and cold. This was heavy and warm, thick with the smell of old wood, brick, and the storm raging on the roof. Valerio had not moved from his position, kneeling before her. His hand was still on her bandaged one, his thumb resting on her pulse point. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind an exhaustion so deep Nora felt hollowed out. "You need to understand what you are in," Valerio said, his voice low. He finally released her hand and stood, moving to a small, well-stocked bar in the corner. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a glass, but did not drink it. He just held it. "My family did not start with logistics," he began, his back to her. "They started with the ports. My grandfather, his brothers. They ran the Santoro line. It was what it was. A way to move goods, some legal, some not, along the entire East Coast." He turned, leaning against the bar, the picture of modern power. "I am not my grandfather. I spent the last 10 years pushing us into the light, Crown Harbor Logistics, that is me. It is a legitimate billion-dollar enterprise. But to make it legitimate, I had to absorb the old routes, the old rules. You cannot build a castle like that without the old, dark foundations. He was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant, fixed on a memory that clearly pained him. There are always factions, he said, his voice hardening. Men who miss the old ways, the quick, dirty money. 5 years ago, I was engaged. Nora's breath caught. It was the last thing she expected. Her name was Ariana. She worked in finance in Miami. She was clean. Outside of this. He stared into the glass. A small faction. One I had sidelined. Wanted to send a message. They thought she was my weakness. They put a bomb in her car. He said it with no emotion at all, a flat statement of fact that was more chilling than any scream. I did not make that mistake again, he finished. I do not have attachments. I have assets, and I have liabilities, until last night. The air was thick with the ghost of the woman who had died. Nora finally understood the coldness, the control. It was armor, built from loss, a cold realization, a memory pricked at her. My father, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He had one case he could never solve. He obsessed over it. He called it the ghost container case. Cargo that would vanish from the manifest, just disappear from the port, completely off system. It drove him crazy. She looked at him, the truth settling on them both, raw and unavoidable. That was you. Was it not the Santoro line? My father was trying to stop your family. Valerio met her gaze, the truth hanging bare between them. Yes, he said, without apology. If I'd met your father when he was working that case, we would have been enemies, but he is gone. And the woman in front of me, he paused, his eyes tracing her face, is not him. His phone buzzed on the counter, a single, short sound. He picked it up, read the text, and his entire posture tightened. The brief, fragile moment of shared history was over. Lila, Nora breathed, already knowing. She's not missing, Valerio said, his voice ablaze. She's being held. A branch of the Eastbridge Collective has her. They think she is leverage. Leverage for what? They believe she knows my shipping schedules, my real ones, he clarified. The ones for weapons. Nora's stomach turned. You have to get her. Please, Valerio, she is a fool. She is stupid, but she is not evil. She would not know what she was doing. Please do not hurt her. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. I do not hurt women, Nora. Not even the stupid ones who get their sisters involved in things that can get them killed. He took a step closer, his cold authority returning. But I will not, for 1 second, allow one person, including your sister, to lead them to you. It was a promise, and it was a threat. It was possessive, terrifying, and in that moment it was the only thing protecting her. You cannot go back to your life, he stated. You cannot go back to the sandwich shop. You cannot go anywhere. The second you step out from my protection, they will take you. To them. You are no longer a person. You are bait. So what am I supposed to do? She cried, gesturing around the luxurious prison. Stay here forever. Yes, he said simply. The finality of it stole her breath. Why? She demanded, her voice shaking. Why are you doing all of this? You did not even know me 24 hours ago. Why all this for a girl you found at an airport? He closed the distance between them, stopping just short of touching her. His eyes were dark, intense, and they were not cold anymore. They were burning. Because, he said, his voice a low, rough whisper, you are the one piece in their entire plan that they did not control. You are the variable, the mistake. They want to correct their mistake. His gaze dropped to her mouth, and he allowed himself a small, dangerous flicker of honesty. And I will not let them. The unspoken words hung in the air. I am the one who will not let you go. The tension was a living thing, heavy and charged. He turned away first, breaking the spell, and walked into the small, industrial-style kitchen. You are hungry. I am hungry. We will eat. He opened a restaurant-grade refrigerator and pulled out eggs, bread, and a block of cheese. He did not ask. He just started cooking, moving with an efficient, practiced grace. Nora sat on a stool at the counter, watching him. The sheer domesticity of it was absurd. The most dangerous man she had ever met was making her a grilled cheese sandwich. He found a bottle of red wine on the counter and poured 2 glasses. He nudged one toward her. He found a small Bluetooth speaker and tapped his phone. A low, mournful sound filled the kitchen. A lone saxophone, playing smooth jazz. They ate in silence. The only sounds, the rain on the roof, the soft music, and the scrape of knives on plates. It was the first normal thing that had happened in a day, and it felt more intimate, more dangerously binding than the desperate kiss in the apartment. It was a truce, a rare, quiet moment stolen from the war they were in. And as Nora watched him, she knew that the line between her old life and this one had just been permanently and irrevocably erased. Valerio moved from the kitchen, his mind clearly made up. "I have to be seen," he announced, his voice clipped. "There is a standing appointment I keep on the first Tuesday of the month. Not showing up signals weakness. It invites questions. So, go," Nora said, her arms crossed over the gray t-shirt. "I will be fine here." "No," he said, and the finality of it shut her down. "You will not be fine. They came to your apartment. They will find this place eventually. You are not staying here alone." He picked up his phone. "And I cannot arrive at the Saffron Room, a place where I am known, with a woman no one has ever seen, without an explanation." "So what is the explanation?" He looked at her, a faint, almost non-existent smile touching his lips. "You are my fiancé, from Jersey. It is unexpected, and the unexpected, they will be too polite to question." 2 hours later, the safe house was a flurry of quiet, intense activity. A woman with a severe haircut and a steel suitcase arrived, a stylist who worked with the silence of a surgeon. She held up fabrics and colors to Nora's face, clicking her tongue, before finally selecting the tools. Nora, who had not worn makeup in months, was stripped, scrubbed, and rebuilt. When she emerged from the bedroom, Valerio was waiting by the door, dressed in a black suit that seemed to drink the light in the room. He turned, and he froze. It was only for a second, but it was the first time Nora had seen him lose his composure. The girl from the sandwich shop was gone. In her place was a woman. The dress was a severe, high-necked black sheath, but it was cut to expose the entire length of her back. Her hair was twisted into a low, complex bun that exposed her neck. The makeup was sharp, her eyes defined, her lips a dark, threatening red. He had seen her tired, and he had seen her terrified. He had never seen her beautiful. His gaze traveled from her throat down to her feet, and for that 1 second, the air left the room. He recovered instantly, the mask of cold control slamming back into place. "It will do," he said. Holding out the black trench coat he had worn at the airport, he placed it over her shoulders. "Do not speak unless I speak to you." The Saffron Room was not a club. It was a vault, dark velvet, old mahogany, and dim, golden light. It was a place where politicians, judges, and men like Valerio met on neutral ground. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the murmur of billion-dollar deals. He walked through the room as if he owned it, and in a way, he did. Men in $10,000 suits stopped their conversations to nod. "Mr. Santoro." He kept his hand on the small of Nora's back, a guiding, proprietary pressure. A man with a flashy gold watch and a face like a bulldog stepped into their path. "Valerio, my friend, you have been holding out on us." His eyes, small and assessing, raked over Nora. "And who is this?" "Rocco," Valerio said. His voice was not cold, it was dead. He did not smile. He simply looked at the man. Nora watched as Rocco Pella, a man who clearly intimidated others, physically withered under that gaze. The smile on his face faltered. He cleared his throat, his eyes darting away. "My apologies, Mr. Santoro. A beautiful evening. Enjoy your night." He evaporated into the crowd. Nora let out a breath she did not realize she was holding. Valerio had not raised his voice, had not moved a muscle, and had won a war with a single look. They were shown to a private, glass-enclosed booth overlooking the room. Marco, who had entered separately, appeared at the door. He did not look at Nora. He handed Valerio a slim tablet. Valerio's jaw tightened. "One of my men," he said, his voice a low, lethal vibration. "He has confirmed it. An anonymous tip was sent to the Eastbridge Collective 2 days ago. It contained the exact plate number of the SUV I was scheduled to take from the airport." He looked up at Nora, his eyes black ice. "The tip came from inside the Mariner Circle." Nora's blood ran cold. The name meant nothing, but his tone told her everything. What is that?" "My inner counsel," he said, his voice raw with fury. "My most trusted men. There is a traitor." They did not stay long. They left through a side entrance. As they stepped into the alley, a car pulled up, and 3 men in cheap, ill-fitting suits got out. "Mr. Santoro," one said, holding up a flimsy badge. "IRS, we have a few questions about your vehicle." They were fake. Nora knew it instantly. Valerio did not slow down. "A performance," he whispered. So low only she could hear. In one fluid motion, he slid his arm around her waist, pulling her flush against his side, shielding her. He dipped his head, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "They are watching. Smile." His breath was hot on her skin. He murmured something else, a low, intimate string of Italian. "Mia cara, sei bellissima stasera." Nora did not understand the words, but she understood the tone, the public, possessive claim, the warmth of his hand spreading low on her hip. A deep, involuntary blush stained her throat, rising to her cheeks. She was not acting. The men saw Valerio's cold stare, the proprietary way he held her, and the clear flush on her face. They looked at each other, suddenly uncertain. This was not a business shakedown. This looked like a man and his woman. They hesitated. And in that hesitation, Marco opened the sedan door, and Valerio bundled Nora inside, getting in behind her. The door slammed shut, sealing them in the armored, silent cabin. Nora's heart was hammering against her ribs. She was still tingling where his hand had been. "You are a very good actor," she said, her voice a little breathless. Valerio turned to her in the darkness. The car was lit only by the passing streetlights, which threw his face into sharp relief. His eyes were not cold, they were burning. "If I were acting, Nora," he said, his voice rough, "you would not be trembling." The air in the car was so thick, so charged, it was a miracle they could breathe. They did not go back to Red Hook. He gave Marco a new address. They drove to Brooklyn Heights, stopping in front of a dark, imposing stone church. "Wait here," he commanded. He got out and slipped in through a side door. Nora watched, confused. Minutes later, he was back, his face grim. "They do not want money," he said as the car pulled away. "Not just money, I heard them. Eastbridge wants the new port access codes, the digital manifest system. They want to move those weapons containers without a trace." He was silent for a long, tense mile. Then he looked at her, his eyes full of a new, dawning horror. "Lila was the door," he said, thinking aloud. "She gave them my schedule, but she was not the prize. You are—" "What are you talking about?" "The daughter of the one man who understood the port system," Valerio clarified, the pieces clicking into place. "Lila was the bait to get me to the airport. You were the bait to make me react. They knew I would take you. They knew your history. Your father's history would trap me." He looked at her, his expression hard. "All traces of the club's intimacy gone. From the second you stepped out of your car at that airport, they had cameras on you. They have your face. They are going to use it to bargain." He clenched his jaw. "I will stop it first." As if summoned by his words, his personal phone rang, not the encrypted one, a new number. He answered it, his voice pure ice. "Santoro." He listened, his knuckles turned white on the phone. Nora watched, her heart in her throat, as all the blood drained from his face. His eyes met hers across the dark car. "They have made contact," he said, his voice flat. "They have Lila. And they have set the terms for an exchange." The car was back in the echoing cavern of the Red Hook safe house, the steel door rolling down with a heavy, final sound. The moment it sealed, Nora turned on Valerio. The fear was gone, replaced by a white-hot, brittle anger. "They want me," she said, her voice shaking with rage. They want to trade me for Lila. They want me because I am a liability, because I am weak." Valerio was already walking toward the tactical table in the center of the room, shrugging off his suit jacket. "They want you because you are mine," he stated, as if it were a simple fact. "I am not yours," she shouted, following him. "I am a person. This is kidnapping. What they are doing. What you are doing. We have to call the police. We call the FBI. That is what normal people do." Valerio spun around, his patience, which had been stretched thin for 24 hours, finally snapped. He grabbed a heavy glass paperweight from the table and hurled it, not at her, but at the brick wall just past her head. It shattered with a sound like a gunshot. "FBI," he roared, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings. "Do you have any idea what the FBI will do? They will not see a victim. They will see the daughter of a federal agent who is now the fiancé of Valerio Santoro. They will see you. They will dig up your sister. They will dig up your father. They will plaster his name and his unsolved cases all over the press. I will not," he spat, "allow your father's grave to be dragged into this." It was a low blow, and it was perfectly aimed. It hit her right in the center of her loyalty, the one thing she had left. She staggered back, all the fight draining out of her, leaving her utterly exposed. "You are just using me," she whispered, the accusation weak. "You are using my father's memory to control me. You just need me because I am convenient. I am the key to get your codes back." The silence that followed was terrifying. Valerio, who had been breathing heavily, went completely still. He turned to her, his face a mask of such cold, lethal fury that she took another step back. "Convenient," he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. He walked toward her, slowly, not like a lover but like a predator. "You think you are convenient?" He stalked her as she retreated, until her back hit the cold, rough brick wall. "If you were convenient, Nora," he hissed, "I would have left you at your apartment in Jersey City. I would have let them take you. I would have let them pick the meat from your bones, and then I would have traded your sister's head for the information they got from you. That would have been convenient." He was inches from her now, his body a wall of heat and rage, caging her in, the injustice of it all, the terror, the betrayal from Lila, the impossibility of her situation. It all broke at once. A sob, sharp and agonizing, tore from her throat. The anger vanished, replaced by a flood of desperate, helpless tears. She was not a fighter. She was just Nora from the sandwich shop, and she was so far out of her depth she was drowning. She pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. Valerio's expression faltered. The rage in his eyes was instantly replaced by something else. Something complex and confused. The raw, unfiltered sound of her despair cut through his armor in a way no bullet ever could. "Nora," he said, his voice dropping, the anger gone. He reached out, his hand hesitating before it touched her shoulder. "Stop. Leave me alone." She wept, trying to push him away, but it was like pushing against the wall itself. "I said, stop," he murmured. He did not move away. Instead, he moved closer, pulling her hands from her face. His grip was firm. "Nora, look at me." She looked up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes blurry and broken. He was going to comfort her. That was his intent. He was going to hold her shoulders and tell her to be strong. But the sight of her, so completely shattered, combined with the lingering adrenaline from the club and the raw, electric anger, fused into something else entirely. The air between them changed, the voltage snapping from fury to a desperate, undeniable need. He did not comfort her. He kissed her. His mouth crashed down on hers, a kiss that was not gentle or tender. It was acclaiming, deep, breathless, and utterly possessive. It was a drowning man's lunge for air. He tasted of whiskey, power, and rage. His hand slid from her shoulder, splaying flat against her back, pressing her body hard against the unforgiving brick. His other hand cupped her jaw, tilting her head, deepening the kiss, taking everything she had to give. He was not rough, but he was decisive. His hand stayed on her back, on the strong column of her throat, on her collarbone, places of control, not of crude intimacy. It was a kiss of protection and possession, a raw statement of, "You are mine." For a split second, Nora was frozen in shock. Then, all the fear and anger and despair inside her found its answer. She did not melt. She fought back. Her hands, which had been pushing him away, fisted in his shirt, she kissed him back with the same desperate, violent energy. She did not submit. She met him. Her teeth grazed his lower lip. A small, defiant bite and a low growl rumbled in Valerio's chest. He broke the kiss, but only for an inch, both of them panting, their foreheads pressed together. His eyes were closed, his breath hot on her lips. He laughed, a short, breathless, and utterly genuine sound. "Yes," he rasped, his lips moving against hers as he spoke. This suits me better." He was about to kiss her again, to take her from the wall and lift her into his arms, when a sharp, respectful knock echoed from the steel door. Knock, knock. Marco's voice was a sheet of ice on the fire. "Sir, the line is open. They're waiting for your answer." Valerio's eyes snapped open. The spell was broken. He and Nora flew apart, two magnets repelled, both breathing hard, their chests heaving. The air in the room was electric, the ghost of what had just happened and what had been about to happen hanging between them. Valerio turned from her, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of profound, uncharacteristic agitation. He took a moment to compose himself, his back to her, before he faced the door. "1 minute," he called out. He turned back to Nora. She was still against the wall, her lips red and swollen, her eyes wide and tear-filled, but the despair was gone, replaced by a stunned, fiery confusion. His expression softened, the hard edges of the boss replaced by the man. He stepped toward her and, gently this time, used his thumb to wipe a stray tear from her cheek. His touch was feather-light. "Tomorrow will be dangerous," he said, his voice quiet. "All the anger gone. I will get your sister. I will do this my way." He looked into her eyes, his own dark and deadly serious. "You have to trust me." Nora, her body still humming from his touch, could only nod. The tears were still there, but they were no longer for herself. Valerio held her gaze for 1 second longer, and in that second, he felt something he had not felt since Miami. The cold, pragmatic need to survive for his family, for his legacy, was suddenly tangled up with a hot, desperate, and purely personal need to survive for the woman staring back at him. The steel door had barely rolled shut when Valerio made a call. It was not to a man in a suit. It was to someone with a gruff, clipped voice. "Dante," Valerio said, and Nora noted the name. "Get the Red Hook crew, not the Circle. No one from the Mariner Circle. Meet me at the safe house in 20 minutes. We are planning a retrieval." He was cutting out his own inner circle. The revelation of a traitor had made him isolate himself, and by extension, it locked Nora even tighter inside his perimeter. The only people he would trust now were the ones who predated his corporate empire. 20 minutes later, 3 men arrived. They were not like Marco, who was silent and tailored. These men were older, rougher, and looked like they had just walked off a fishing boat or a loading dock. They were the old team. They nodded to Valerio with a deep, familial respect and did not look at Nora twice. Valerio unrolled a set of architectural blueprints on the heavy wooden table. They were old, bearing the stamp of the Port Authority, dated 1980. Pier 47 Annex, Valerio said, his voice all business. "A disused container terminal. Eastbridge wants the exchange here, at 0200. They think it is neutral ground." One of the men, Dante, traced a line with a thick finger. "It is not neutral. It is a box canyon. One way in, one way out by land, but they have the water. They will have a boat waiting here." "Exactly," Valerio said. "They will have men on the roof of the old customs house. I want Sniper 1 here, Sniper 2 here, overlooking them." They spoke for an hour, a rapid, coded language of sightlines, exfiltration routes, and kill boxes. Nora stood by the wall, feeling useless, a civilian in a war room. Finally, Valerio tapped the center of the map, the open space where the exchange would happen. "They want me to bring the codes. They want me to bring her," he said, nodding toward Nora. "As proof of good faith, I go in. The exchange is made. They release Lila. Nora's voice cut through the technical talk, surprisingly steady. I should go in first. All four men stopped and looked at her. Valerio's face was thunderous. Do not be a fool. I am not, Nora said, stepping forward, her hands flat on the map. They want me as the proof. Right. So send the proof. I go in, alone, to show you are serious. You stay back. I am the only one who knows what Lila looks like up close, in the dark, when she is terrified. I will know if it is a trap. I will know if she is hurt. Absolutely not, Valerio snapped. It is logical, Nora insisted, her voice gaining strength. They will not be expecting it. They will be expecting you, the boss, surrounded by men. They will not be expecting the girl from the airport to walk in alone. It disarms them. It gives your men time to get in place. Dante, the older man, looked at Nora with new respect, then at Valerio. She's not wrong. Valerio, it is a good angle, a very clean angle. Valerio looked at Nora, his eyes burning, hating the idea, but seeing the brutal logic in it. He cursed, a low, vicious sound in Italian. Fine. He walked to a steel case and pulled out a piece of equipment so small it was almost invisible, a flesh-toned earpiece. He stepped toward Nora, his anger rolling off him, and pushed her hair back from her ear. His touch was rough, impatient. You will wear this, he commanded, his voice a low growl for her alone. The second you are in, you are my eyes. I will be in yours. I am teaching you 3 words. He leaned in, his breath warm, his voice vibrating against her skin. Listen to me. Fuoco, he whispered. It means fire. You say it if you see a weapon I cannot... Tradito. It means betrayed. You say it if it is not Lila, or if the situation is wrong, and adesso, it means now. You say it when you have her, and you want me to bring the sky down. He pulled back. Say them. Fuoco, Tradito, adesso, she repeated, her voice a little shaky, the intimacy of the moment, the raw survival of it, more binding than any kiss. He nodded, satisfied. He dismissed his men. They filed out, leaving the blueprints, the maps, and the tension behind. The safe house was silent again. Just the two of them. The clock on the wall showed it was just after midnight. The air was thick. A heavy combination of fear, exhaustion, and the unresolved, crackling desire from their earlier clash. Nora walked to the map, tracing the route she would have to take. What if you die tomorrow, Valerio? She asked, her voice small. He was silent for a long time. She felt him come up behind her. He did not touch her, but his heat was a presence at her back. I do not plan on dying, he said, his voice a low, rough murmur near her ear. Not before you answer the question I asked you at the Cobalt Tower. She turned in the space of his arms, looking up at him. You never asked me a question? My staying, he whispered, when I should have let you go. Your staying, when you should have run. It was a question. He leaned down and kissed her. This kiss was not the angry, possessive clash from before. It was slow. It was searching. It was a desperate, tender exploration, a question and an answer all at once. His hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones as if memorizing her. Her hands slid up his chest, her fingers tangling in the front of his thin, black shirt, feeling the steady, powerful beat of his heart beneath her palm. His suit jacket, the one from the saffron room, was still draped on her shoulders. It slid to the floor, forgotten. His lips moved from her mouth, tracing a hot, slow path to her jaw, to the pulse that was hammering in her throat. Nora, he breathed, the sound of her name a prayer and a curse. She pulled him closer. Her body, still clad in the soft sweatpants and t-shirt, molding against his. He guided her back, not to a bed, but to the long leather sofa in the center of the command room. He sat, pulling her down with him, so she was half draped across his lap. He grabbed a thin wool blanket from the back of the couch and threw it over them, a shield against the cold night, against what was coming. They were still dressed, but it was the most intimate, vulnerable moment of her life. He was not a boss. She was not a victim. They were just two people, on the edge of a war, holding on. Her head rested on his chest, right over his heart. They lay like that for a long time, just breathing. The only sound the wind outside. I hate the smell of pizza, she whispered into his shirt. He went still. What? At the shop, she clarified. Pizza, sourdough, vinegar. For 6 years. It is the smell of being stuck. She paused. I like the smell of the ocean, right before a storm, and old books. He said nothing, just tightened his arm around her, holding her, absorbing this useless, vital information. After this is done, he said, his voice a low, steady promise. Your sister. She will be taken care of. I will put her in a clinic, somewhere quiet, in the countryside where no one can ever find her, where she cannot find trouble. He looked down at the top of her head, not because she deserves it, because you do. Nora's throat tightened. She lifted her hand and pressed it flat against his chest, right over the steady beat. Do not let it stop, she whispered, her voice thick. Not before I am finished talking. He kissed the top of her head. They did not speak again. Hours later, when the first gray light of false dawn touched the windows, they were still there, asleep, but not. A tangle of limbs under a thin blanket, 2 empty glasses on the table next to them, beside a 9mm handgun and a single flesh-colored earpiece, the maps for the battle, scattered on the floor at their feet. The Hawthorne terminal was a boneyard, a skeleton of rusted gantries and cracked concrete jutting into the black water. It was 2 a.m. The wind from the bay was a living thing, a cold, whining animal that clawed at Nora's thin jacket and tore the sound from her lips. Her hands were bound in front of her with a plastic zip tie, loose enough for her to break. Just as he had shown her, the flesh-colored earpiece was a tiny, cold ghost in her ear. I'm at the gate, she whispered, her voice sounding small. No one is here. Valerio's voice came back, a low, static-laced murmur. They are watching. Nora, move to the center of the yard. Let them see you. Dante, do you have her? There was a click. Eyes on, boss, said the gruff, familiar voice of Valerio's oldest soldier. She is clear. I see 2, maybe 3, on the warehouse roof. No sign of the package. Nora's stomach clenched, but she walked forward, her steps echoing in the vast, empty space. She pushed open the groaning metal door of the main warehouse. It was cavernous, smelling of rust and salt. A single, bare bulb, hanging 3 stories up, cast a weak, yellow circle of light on the floor. In the center of that circle was a wooden chair, and in the chair was Lila. Her sister was bound with thick rope, her head bowed, her mouth was covered with a wide, brutal strip of silver duct tape. When she heard Nora's step, her head snapped up. Her eyes were wide, white with terror and slick with tears. A choked, humiliated sound came from her throat. Touching, a voice said. Nora spun. A man stepped from the deep shadows behind a row of shipping containers. He was not a stranger. He was not Eastbridge. It was Dante Riva, Valerio's right hand, the man who had been in the safe house, the man who was supposed to be Valerio's eyes. He held a small, black radio in his hand. He clicked it. Boss, the package is secure. Looks like just the sister. He looked at Nora and smiled, a cold, terrible expression. He will be here in 5 minutes. He's a man of his word. Nora's blood turned to ice water. She fumbled at her earpiece, her bound hands shaking. Valerio, it is a trap. Tradito, it is Dante. Dante laughed, a short, ugly sound. He cannot hear you. Sweetheart, that earpiece, it has been routed to me for the last 10 minutes. He thinks I am watching you. He does not know I am the one he should be watching. Why? Nora whispered, the one word all she could manage. Why, Dante walked a slow circle around her, his gun held casually at his side. Because I am tired of cleaning. I am tired of logistics. I am tired of watching him turn the Santoro name into a stock portfolio. He spat on the concrete. This family was built on fear, on guns. The Eastbridge Collective understands that. They want a partner, not a CEO. But to do that, the CEO has to be removed. The airport, Nora breathed, understanding. A test, Dante sneered. Your idiot sister gave us the opening. We pushed you at him to see what he would do. The old Valerio would have seen the trap, used you as a pawn, and discarded you. But this new Valerio... He shook his head in disgust. He kept you. He brought you into his house. He made you his weakness. And now, I am going to use that weakness to put a bullet in his head. He will not come for me, Nora lied, her voice trembling. He's only here for Lila. He is coming, a voice said. Cutting through the dark, Valerio Santoro stepped out of the shadows and into the weak circle of light. He was alone. His hands were empty, held open at his sides. He did not look at Nora or Lila. His eyes were locked on his oldest friend. This is between us. Dante, let them walk. Dante's face was a mask of triumph. You fool. You sentimental, arrogant fool. You really came alone, into the box. He raised his hand and screamed, now, thwap, thwap, thwap. The sound of silenced weapons came from the darkness above. The trap was sprung. Crack, crack. Two loud, unsilenced rifle shots answered from a different direction from the very roof of the warehouse. Two of Dante's men screamed and fell from the rafters, crashing onto the containers below. The warehouse erupted. It was not a trap. It was a crossfire. Valerio was already in motion, drawing his own weapon, firing into the shadows as Dante's men and Valerio's hidden team opened up on each other. Nora did not freeze. She ran. She snapped the weak tie on her wrists and lunged for her sister, her fingers clawing at the thick ropes. Nora, Nora, I'm so sorry, I am so sorry. Lila was sobbing, hysterical. Shut up, Nora yelled, ripping the duct tape from Lila's mouth. Sorry is for later now. You crawl. She shoved her sister off the chair and onto the ground, pushing her toward the dark safety of a massive steel container. The girl from the sandwich shop was gone. They were almost there. Dante, enraged, saw them moving. He roared, If I cannot have the business, I will take his woman. He raised his pistol, ignoring Valerio, aiming straight at Nora's back. No! Valerio screamed. He was across the floor, faster than Nora thought possible. He did not have time to shoot. He did not have time to push her. He just had time to shield her. He lunged, slamming into her, his body covering hers, just as Dante fired. Pop, pop! The sounds were small, almost nothing in the chaos. Valerio's whole body seized, a low, animal grunt of pure pain torn from his chest. He staggered, but he did not fall, held up by pure, cold rage. One bullet had torn through his shoulder. The other was low, in his side. Valerio, Nora screamed. She saw Dante, his gun still raised for a third shot, his face a mask of shock that Valerio was still standing. Nora remembered her lesson. She remembered the word. Fuoco. She shrieked, the Italian word for fire ripping from her throat, a single precise crack from the roof. The gun in Dante's hand exploded, dissolving into shattered metal. He screamed, clutching his ruined, bleeding hand. The remaining Eastbridge men, seeing their leader disarmed and their ambush broken, vanished into the shadows, retreating toward the water. Valerio was still on his feet, barely. He was braced against a concrete pillar, his own gun leveled, his hand shaking but steady, aimed straight at Dante's heart. He was bleeding, the dark stain spreading rapidly across his white shirt. Valerio's men, the Red Hook crew, emerged from the dark. Take him, Valerio commanded, his voice a hoarse, ragged gasp. Alive! I want him! He has to clean the circle! The fight was over. The adrenaline vanished. Valerio's legs gave out. Nora caught him, her small body collapsing under his weight. They sank to the filthy concrete floor together. You idiot, she sobbed, her hands pressing hard against the wound in his side, the hot, sticky blood pumping over her fingers. You arrogant, stupid idiot. He looked up at her, his face pale and slick with sweat. His breath was coming in short, painful gasps, but his eyes were sharp, focused only on her. He tried to smile. I believe, he panted. The question was answered. Nora's face was a mess of tears, terror, and a new, fierce, protective rage. She pressed her hands harder, trying to stop the bleeding. Don't, she commanded, her voice breaking but fierce. Don't you dare. I haven't answered yet. Valerio was not taken to a hospital. There was no wailing siren, no emergency room. He was driven at a very high and steady speed to a private compound in the green, rolling hills of Connecticut. The sign at the gate did not say clinic, it said Ravenbrook Estate. It was a pristine, white brick medical facility hidden inside a Georgian-style mansion, staffed by doctors who were on the Santoro payroll and very good at keeping their mouths shut. The wounds were not critical. They were messy, painful, and had bled a terrifying amount, but the bullets had passed through. One had torn the muscle of his shoulder, the other had grazed his ribs, just missing anything vital. He was, the silent doctor assured Nora, extremely lucky. Nora did not leave his side. She sat in the sterile, luxurious room for 2 days, sleeping in a leather armchair, drinking the coffee the staff brought her, and ignoring the surprised looks from Valerio's men, who were not used to seeing anyone, let alone the airport girl, take the primary seat of vigil. On the 3rd day, they brought Lila. She was pale, washed, and dressed and clean, new clothes, but she still looked like a ghost. She was escorted by 2 of Valerio's men, who left her in the hallway of the clinic, just outside Valerio's open door. Nora stepped out. Lila flinched, then burst into a fresh flood of tears, a storm of apology and self-hatred. "I did not know. Nora, I swear this man, from the Northlight Meridian Agency, he was so charming. He said he had a client for me, a big one. He said if I just gave him the arrival details for one of Valerio's guests, he could fast-track my contract. He said it was a test of my resourcefulness. I just thought it was business. I did not know they were them." Nora listened, her face unreadable. There was no anger left. There was just a vast, cold, empty space where her old loyalty had been. "Are you done?" Nora asked, her voice quiet. Lila hiccuped, her tears stopping. "Nora, please. I am your sister." "Yes," Nora said, her voice holding that flat, pragmatic American tone. "You are, and I am not going to let them kill you." She took a step closer. "But you and we are not what we were. You are going to go to the place they take you. You are going to be quiet. You will pay your debt by staying silent and living a good life. There is no more room in my life for your trouble." Lila stared, recognizing the stranger her sister had become. Nora turned and walked back into Valerio's room without a second glance. An hour later, Valerio, his arm in a black sling over a crisp white shirt, was seated at a large desk in the estate's library. He had summoned the new Mariner Circle, 3 men, old and loyal, and 2 new ones. Nora stood by the window, watching. Valerio's voice was low, but it carried the weight of a judge's sentence. "Dante Riva betrayed the Santoro name," he said, his voice flat. "He aligned with the Eastbridge Collective to bring war to our business, and he used this family's trust to do it. He will be dealt with." Valerio continued. He did not say how. He did not need to. The simple, declarative statement was enough. The men understood. He had just confirmed, even with bullets in him, that his discipline was greater than his rage. He was still the boss. After the men had been dismissed, the room was quiet. The afternoon sun was streaming through the leaded glass windows. Valerio looked up at Nora. He was pale, but his eyes were as sharp and clear as they had been at the airport. "So," he said, his voice soft, "can you answer me now?" Nora walked away from the window, stopping in front of his desk. She was no longer wearing borrowed clothes. She was in a simple, dark green dress the staff had provided. "I will not go back to the sandwich shop," she said, her voice firm. "I will not go back to that apartment, but," she added, her eyes locking with his, "I am also not going to be the woman who sits in your penthouse, waiting for you to come home, wondering if you are alive." A slow smile, the first genuine smile she had ever seen from him, touched the corners of Valerio's mouth. He reached across the desk with his good hand and pushed a thin, blue file toward her. "I assumed as much," he said. She opened it. The cover read Crown Harbor Logistics. Inside, it was not a bank statement, it was a job description. Director, Humanitarian Sustainable Port Projects. It detailed a new initiative to manage clean shipping routes and oversee the family's legitimate charitable donations through the port. "It is the clean part of the empire," he said, watching her. "The part I am building for the future. It needs a director. Someone with a family history and port integrity. Someone I trust." Nora looked at him, the weight of the offer settling on her. It was a real role, a way to build, not just to hide. "This," he added, his voice serious, "also contractually binds your sister to my protection. As the family of a high-level employee, she becomes our responsibility. You carry them, Nora, and I carry you." She closed the file. She did not need to read the rest. She walked around the desk, stopping until she was standing directly in front of him. He looked up at her, waiting. "In that case, Mr. Santoro," she said, a small smile playing on her own lips, "I accept the position." He rose from his chair, his good arm coming around her waist, pulling her gently against him, mindful of his shoulder. He kissed her. It was not the desperate, angry kiss from the safe house. It was not the possessive claim in the alley. It was slow. It was certain. It was the kiss of a beginning, warm with the afternoon sun, a promise of a life that would be dangerous, but that would be theirs. They stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing. "There is one more thing," he murmured against her hair. He led her to a large screen on the wall. He tapped his phone, and a video feed appeared. It was the security footage from the Atlantic Gateway Airport 48 hours ago. He zoomed in on a figure. There, in the crowd, was Nora, on her phone, her face tight with anger, clearly arguing with Lila. He hit play. As Nora was on the phone, another woman, wearing a trench coat and glasses, walked past. She paused. She raised her own phone, not to her ear, but to her hip, and snapped 3 clear, quick pictures of Nora. "That woman," Valerio said, his voice cold, "is a known operative for the North Light Meridian Agency." Nora's blood went cold. "She took my picture. Before I even got there, while I was still on the phone. They did not just use Lila's mistake. Nora," Valerio said, turning her to face him, "they chose you. They photographed you, targeted you, and pushed you into my path before you even hung up the phone. They wanted you, specifically, to be the one I found." Nora stared at the screen, at the woman who had sealed her fate, and then back at Valerio. He had been the target, and she had been the bullet. They both understood. It was not an accident. It was not a mistake. It was a setup from the very first second. Wow. And it was the single, fatal flaw in their enemy's plan, because they had chosen the one woman in the world who would not just break, but would fit perfectly, right at his side. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below. Share your thoughts and let us all connect. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It helps us a great deal. And finally, show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.